Okay, ito dito tayo, Prof, no? Unahin muna natin kasi 'di ba nagkaroon tayo ng discussion last time, pero yun naman na interview ng Australia, tamba, Australian news 'yun eh. Tapos may recent na interview naman sa Bloomberg. Unahin natin ito kasi bago itong mga labas na statement na naman dahil sa panibagong issue last Sabado. Sa Bloomberg dito at inamin ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos sa interview niya, kasabay din ito sa pagbisita sa bansa ng Secretary of State ng Estados Unidos. Sabi niya, and I quote, "The threat has grown." Dito sa sa rehiyon natin with China. "And since the threat has grown, we must do more to defend our territory. And so maybe perhaps that's what people are seeing. A more robust defense of our territorial rights as recognized by the international community through international law, through the UNCLOS." Ayan. Ano ba ang masasabi mo dito, Prof?
Unang-una, napaka-vague ng statement na naman ni Pbbm. What do you mean by threat in the first place? You should define what is the threat. Ano ba ang threat? Is it what he's referring to is the South China Sea dispute? I mean, it's been there for the longest time. Hindi pa siya presidente, may dispute na sa South China Sea. And wala namang threat directly coming from China. And do you really think China will invade the Philippines? I don't believe in it and I don't think so. So unang-una, what is the threat that she's referring to? Second is what is the territory that he's referring to na sinasabi niya na we need to defend our territorial rights. In the very first place, when you talk about territory, may boundary talaga ang Pilipinas. Na based on UNCLOS, na territory natin, ibig sabihin, we have sovereignty. But when you go beyond the 12 nautical miles, that's not anymore our territory. So we don't have territorial rights really. We only have sovereign rights, which is the EEZ. But the EEZ is even complicated issue. So hindi ko maintindihan yung mga ganyang klaseng statement ng isang pangulo na hindi malinaw. And it gives, ang ano lang din is these are all statement na hindi maintindihan ng tao kung ano ba talaga ang ibig mong sabihin. For people like me, probably I understand where he's coming from. And it's only a way of telling the people na, justifying the moves of the current government. And what are these moves na ginagawa ng current government? Like, for example, the presence of EDCA. And renewal of EDCA agreement is upcoming, I think, at the end of this month. It's either March 28 or 29. I'm not exact, but that is the two dates that, you need to renew the agreement, the EDCA agreement. I think these are all just smokescreen to justify the militarization of the Philippines. What are the militarization na sinasabi ko? Andyan yung EDCA. Then you have the RRA with the Japanese. You have the Australian troops presence in the Philippines. Then you have what? You will have a presence of Japanese troops in the country. And then you have this agreement, defense military agreement with UK. All of this are, being, the South China Sea, what's going on in there is being used as a defense to the militarization of the country. Because ang tanong ko, what is that threat that you're talking about when you talk about China? China will not invade the country. That is one thing I'm sure about. That's one thing that I can see. I don't think they're stupid people that they will invade a country like the Philippines. They know the experience of being invaded because they have that in their history. And I don't think the Chinese would want to have that kind of repeat of history in another country because they experience what you call humiliation because of the invasion during the colonization period. So I don't see it that way. So hindi ko maintindihan itong mga statement ni PBBM na threat from China. So what is really the threat? The South China Sea area is disputed. As far as China is concerned, ang sinasabi ng Chinese, there's no dispute because their claim is sovereignty. So they have the claim of China is not EEZ but sovereignty. So ibig sabihin, teritoryo nila yan. Ang sa atin kasi, we are saying that we have EEZ there based on UNCLOS. But if you really look at the two, for as far as China is concerned, there's no dispute kasi pag tinignan mo yung UNCLOS cannot settle, it's not competent to settle sovereignty issues. Yun yung dapat nating isipin. So anong gagawin mo? Makikipagbakbakan ka, tapos sasabihin mo, we need militarization or we need military aid coming from United States, Australia, Japan, because there's a China threat? I don't think so. These are just justification for all of this militarization that is going on in the country. Yun yung mga ano kasi, yung mga statement kasi ni PBBM, always vague. Walang definite na definition kung anong ibig niyang sabihin. Now, my challenge to the people in government, try to define what do you mean by threat. Because what is happening in the South China Sea is a norm. For me, there are bakbakan in there, like may water cannon ka, whatever. Kasi part yan ng dynamic kasi disputed yung area. So, hindi kasi nag-uusap yung dalawa kung kailan papasok itong Pilipinas at papapasukin ba ng China yan o hindi. So, you need to communicate kasi. You need to negotiate. Kung hindi kayo magne-negotiate, magkakaroon pa talaga ng gitgitan sa South China Sea. And one of that is what happened this last Saturday na nag-water cannon ng China on our resupply mission. So that is really an expectation. As far as I'm concerned, hindi na bago sa akin to kasi ano yan eh, nangyayari yan every now and then. Kasi nga, there's no communication, there's no negotiation na nangyayari na both sides will meet halfway. Yun yung problema. So, we push, they defend, we push, we defend. At saka, kung sinasabi nilang they defend, they will use their own way of defending their so-called rights and their assertion. Ang water cannon kasi, if you really look at the measures by which like a coast guard in sea will be able to reprimand another coast guard, it's a normal use. Yung water cannon kasi hindi yan firepower eh. Ano yan, tubig eh. Nakita mo sa Taiwan and Japan, sometimes they do that. Nagwa-water cannon sila sa isa't isa. Nagwa-water cannon ang Taiwan against Japan. Japan would do the same in the disputed area. May disputed area din kasi doon. So these are normal things that happens in a disputed area, especially when you talk about sea. Pero or maritime.
Laging sinasabi ng ating pamahalaan handang depensahan, but during that time na binubuhusan ng tubig, binobomba ng tubig yung kinunsay natin na barko, hindi rin tayo nagbuga ng tubig. Parang nagpakawawa lang tayo. Nasaan na yung pagdepensa? Lagi natin sinasabi na depensahan yung mga mangingisda. Yun nga sa atin, may mga pala dyan, mga PCG yata na mga personnel ba? May mga personahe mula sa ating pamahalaan. Kasi wala tayong naibuga. Kaya nga, magtatanong ka, ano bang purpose na doon? Pinabayaan mo lang, paglalayagin mo, papupuntahin mo doon sa BRP Sierra Madre, bahala ka na. Tapos pag binomba ka ng tubig, sige lang, para maganda yung drama. Parang ganun ba?
So it's really, yun yung basa ko dyan eh. It's like staging a drama. Painting China as the aggressive party. Kasi kung tutusin, mayroon namang water cannon din ang ating PCG eh. May water cannon eh. Pinakita pa nga nila yan last year ba or somewhere. Basta may water cannon na pinakita din, demonstrate nila na may water cannon din. Ang mga vessels natin, Coast Guard yan. Of course, it's equipped supposedly with water cannon. Bakit hindi sila mag-water cannon din? So nag-water cannon yung dalawa. It's just normal. It's not a normal incident in the South China Sea. But what I mean is, this water cannon thing are part of the measures kapag may nire-reprimand or nagre-respond sa isang insidente ang isang Coast Guard ship. Lalo na kapag feeling nila may intrusion sa kanilang pinoprotektahan or something. So may water cannon din tayo. Bakit hindi sila nag-water cannon? At saka, ang ano ba talaga ang purpose dyan? Bakit, halimbawa, nag-radyo ata ang Chinese side na, you're intruding in our sovereign territory, blah, blah, blah. So, mayroong communication. So, anong gagawin mo? Hindi makipag-communicate ka na, okay, we are just doing a resupply mission and blah, blah, blah. Hindi eh. Talagang susugod ka. Kung susugod ka, talagang mag-a-action din ang Chinese side. Ganun yan eh. So, ang hindi ko maintindihan, why do we have to do that? Are we creating some kind of dramatic scene for the international community to see it and to paint China in a bad light? Is that what is that the intention behind? Kasi ganun ang lumalabas if you really analyze things deeply eh. So, ang tanong ko, what's the purpose of doing this drama? Or what's the purpose of staging a drama? What's really the purpose of that? Do we get something out of it? No. Do we get our relationship with China better? No. Nagkakaroon lalo ng gulo, nagkakaroon ng gitgitan, nag-harden ang position ng China. And do you really think we will win over this? Of course not. So, but what is the reason behind this kind of super dramatic thing? What is the reason behind it? Ang nakikita ko lang, to be very frank with you, is these are being used to justify certain decision of the current government of the country, of the Philippines, that maybe Filipinos will say yes. But if the Filipinos would really think deeply, they should not say yes to these things, especially the militarization of the country. Second is yung ang daming problema na domestic na bansa, hindi pinag-uusapan sa dyaryo kasi ang laging nasa dyaryo ang South China Sea. South China Sea. When in fact, that South China Sea dispute can be talked about, can be negotiated quietly, diplomatically, but quietly in a peaceful manner. You don't have to always put it out in the public kasi wala kang mariresolve kung gagawin mong megaphone diplomacy yan. Kasi lalo lang nagkakagitgitan, lalo lang nagkakasakitan, pati damdamin ng mga tao ng both sides, lalong nag-harden yung position ng bawat isa. And you cannot resolve a dispute by doing this kind of things. So yun yung basa ko eh. Ulit tayo ng ulit eh. Ayun nga sinasabi ko, these incidents are just repeating and repeating and repeating. Pero ang tanong, bakit nagtatanong ka pa kung bakit ang China, ganun ang reaction, when in fact, this has been repeating all over. So it's like so stupid for us to ask why China is doing this when we are repeating the same thing also on our side. So what's the purpose of this? Where do you want to go? Or is this just a dramatic thing to justify certain things that this current government wants to do that actually people in the Philippines doesn't like this kind of things? So yun, like for example, EDCA. I don't think Filipinos really understand EDCA and the implications of EDCA, especially when you have this so-called plan of the United States to have war with China. I don't think if Filipinos will understand this, they will not support this. But tingnan mo, sino ba ang nagdi-discuss sa media nito? Kayo lang sa SMNI ang nagdi-discuss ng mga issues na very critical and relevant sa bansa natin. Ang ibang mainstream, ang ibang media and other mainstream media, they don't discuss these things deeply because they don't want the Filipino people to understand things deeply kasi alam nila na kapag naintindihan niya ng mga Pilipino, hindi papayag ang Pilipino na malagay ang Pilipinas sa isang sitwasyon na alanganin. At the end of the day, wala tayong makukuha at malalagay pa tayo sa peligro. Yun eh. Ang mga dyaryo, kahit wala ako sa bansa ngayon, lahat ng dyaryo nire-review ko. Walang ibang nadidiscuss sa dyaryo kundi South China Sea, South China Sea. Pero ang daming problema ng bayan.
Prof,